Jana sat alone in her home, attempting to distract herself from her melancholic thoughts. Despite being 6 months pregnant, she couldn't shake off her sadness. The doorbell suddenly rang, and her friend Nastya arrived for a visit. Nastya, a couple of years younger than Jana, had been her friend for over 2 years, having met when Jana and her husband Pedya moved into the neighborhood. Nastya had been living there with her parents for many years. "Hey, Jana, why the long face? You look so sad," Nastya exclaimed as she entered. Jana hesitated for a moment, but eventually decided to confide in her friend about her troubles. "Nastya, I think Peter is cheating on me," she admitted, taking a deep breath as if gathering courage. Surprised, Nastya looked at her friend and smiled. "What nonsense! Where did you get that idea? It can't be true." Even Jana herself couldn't fully understand why she had come to this conclusion. After all, her husband didn't come home late from work, except for maybe 15 or 20 minutes occasionally. He was the sole breadwinner of the family, and there were no issues with intimacy. The fact that she was carrying their baby was evidence of their connection. But there was something inside Jana that prevented her from finding peace, a sort of sixth sense telling her that he was being unfaithful, that there was another woman. It consumed her thoughts. "Oh, I don't know. My intuition is overwhelming. It's not a recent feeling. It's been over a year now. He has changed somehow, and it keeps happening. I'm certain he's involved with someone else," Jana explained. Confused, Nastya looked at her friend. "Okay, but why do you say that? I mean, he does everything for you. I've known you for a long time, and I can see the way you look at each other. He's crazy about you." "He used to be, but not anymore," Jana responded. "He hardly ever looks me in the eye when I ask if he loves me. He avoids answering directly, and I practically have to beg for those words. And then there are the strange calls and texts he receives all the time. Sometimes even at night. He claims it's work-related, but I find it hard to believe. I'm tempted to snoop through his phone, but I can't bring myself to do it." Nastya looked at her friend incredulously. "No, don't invade his privacy like that. Everyone deserves personal space. Trust me, if he finds out, it will only make things worse. He'll say, 'You don't trust me. You're right not to go through his calls and messages.'" Jana felt that Nastya's response was unexpected, considering her usual personality. Perhaps Nastya was right. "And he even takes his phone with him to the bathroom now. As if I would touch it anyway. Why does he have to carry it everywhere?" Jana added, "He's probably just playing with it or reading something online. You're letting your suspicions get the best of you. You can't do that, especially when you're pregnant," Nastya reassured. Jana knew deep down that she might be foolishly overthinking things. However, she had felt a growing distance in their relationship for a while now. "We don't even go grocery shopping together anymore. We used to do it as a couple, but now he goes alone and throws away all the receipts. Sometimes I can't help but wonder how much something costs, but I can't see the prices anymore. He's changed some of his habits," Jana expressed. "What do you mean?" Nastya asked, seeking clarification. Jana pondered for a moment. It wasn't easy to put it into words. "For example, he used to go out on the balcony to smoke when we first moved in. But now he smokes in the yard or near the entrance. When I asked him why, he said it's more convenient. Come on, you're pregnant? He's just trying to protect you. You should be glad that the smoke doesn't enter the room through the balcony." "You even have a balcony in your bedroom," Nastya replied. "Yeah, but he started doing that before I was even pregnant. We used to say good morning and good night to each other. He would kiss me before bed and give me a gentle hug. Now it's all gone," Jana lamented. "Oh, Jana, you're overthinking things. All men are like that. At first, it's all romantic and lovey-dovey, but eventually it fades away. They can't always be perfect. Don't make things up in your mind. Pedya loves you. Trust me, you're just overanalyzing," Nastya reassured her. Although Nastya had grown tired of the conversation, She knew that her friend needed further reassurance. "Jana, he's just exhausted from work. That's all," Jana's friend attempted to reason. And sometimes spouses do get on each other's nerves. After all, you've been married for around 5 years. It's normal. Jana retorted, "You talk as if you were married." "Well, I wasn't, but I am a woman, so I understand a thing or two about it," her friend justified. "Yes, but why doesn't he shave before bed anymore, or in the morning before work? And why does he take a shower when he comes home from work instead of before bed? It's as if he's been working at a construction site all day instead of sitting in an air-conditioned office. And he douses himself with perfume as if he robbed a perfume store." Jana's annoyance was evident. Jana had expected her friend to offer support in some way, but instead, she found herself defending her husband. "Oh my God, that's irrelevant. He just wants to smell nice." "That's a good thing, isn't it?" her friend replied. "It's not. The problem is, I've asked him several times to not wear so much perfume. Strong scents really bother me. I can't even kiss him goodbye when he goes to work because of it. It's as if he's doing it intentionally. And why do you always defend him?" Nastya hesitated, carefully choosing her words. "I'm not defending him. I'm trying to protect you. I don't want you to lose your husband over something so trivial. We live in the same building, and I often see him on the stairs. If I ever overheard anything suspicious, I would definitely tell you. But I haven't seen or heard anything like that. Doesn't that count for something?" Jana looked at her friend skeptically. Her words seemed nonsensical, and something felt off. "It's as if you've been spying on us through the peephole. How could you possibly know anything? Don't make things up." "No, I can't take it anymore. He's coming home from work today, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to check his phone. If there's any evidence, it'll be there." "Whatever," Nastya replied. "But I still don't recommend it. Sorry, I have to go now. My mother is waiting for me. By the way, could you lend me some sugar? I don't feel like going to the store." Jana poured a glass of sugar, and Nastya left. Doubt lingered in Jana's mind, but she couldn't pinpoint why. In theory, talking to her friend should have eased her mind at least a little, but it had the opposite effect. After leaving Jana's apartment, Nastya glanced around and dialed Petya's number as she headed towards the elevator. "Hey, clean your phone before you come home. Jana suspects something. She told me herself. She's planning to go through your phone today. Don't forget to delete any incriminating photos. And we need to talk about this. Swing by my place for a few minutes after work. My mom won't be there, and my dad is at the cottage. Okay?" Petya was taken aback by what he heard, but decided to comply and cleared his phone. Today, he intentionally left it behind to give his wife the opportunity to check it. In the evening, he returned home to find a delicious dinner waiting for him as usual. However, his wife seemed quiet and somewhat moody. He understood what was bothering her, but he didn't want to ask. Divorcing her wasn't part of his current plans, especially with her being pregnant. At least not for now. Leaving a pregnant woman was not the most honorable thing to do. It seemed to him that he and Jana had become distant from each other lately, and the reason for that was not Nastya, but the apartment his parents had bought for his wife. Only his wife became the owner, not both of them. They gifted the apartment to her, even after their marriage. But the thought of being left with nothing if anything happened hurt him deeply. They never directly talked about it, although it affected their relationship. By the time they moved into the new apartment and completed the renovations, Petya was already different. And then Nastya entered the scene. She was an attractive neighbor from the first floor. Initially, she became friends with his wife, and later they became friends in a different way. Nastya was kind and compassionate, always ready to listen and support him. She truly understood and praised him, fulfilling his wishes. It was something he felt was missing in his relationship with Jana. Although his wife also praised him, the significance of the apartment overshadowed any good she did for him. Nastya was different, selfless, bringing tenderness and trust. During dinner, Petya casually asked Yana about her day, but he only half listened to her story. After dinner, he kissed her cheek and thanked her, hoping for joy, but instead, he received a peculiar look from her. That evening, he didn't rush to the shower after work, even though there were no plans with Nastya tonight. Occasionally, they would meet at her house if her parents were absent, sometimes in the car, other times in an apartment across the street, where Nastya took care of the flowers and cat for the flight attendant landlady who was rarely home. It was a stroke of luck to have such a kind neighbor to help. Before going to bed, Petya washed and even shaved, expecting it to please his wife. However, her expression remained unhappy. When he went to smoke on the balcony, Yana's mind was in turmoil. She no longer wanted to check his phone. The puzzle pieces were fitting together to reveal an unpleasant picture. She just had to wait for the final piece. Petya came in from the balcony, climbed into bed, and kissed his wife. "Good night, my love," he whispered softly, just as he always did. Yana looked at him with disbelief and asked in a hushed tone, "Are you sleeping with Nastya?" Petya realized he had been caught in the act, but he hadn't yet grasped how she had found out. What should he do now? Unable to come up with a better plan, he resorted to denying everything. "Darling, what are you talking about? I'm not sleeping with anyone. Don't be silly. It's just your hormones," he said, rolling over to pretend to sleep. But Yana couldn't be calmed down. She carefully got out of bed and walked up to his side. "Sleeping tonight won't work. Please, don't make a fool out of me. Find the courage to admit it if you have the audacity to cheat," she urged. Petya knew he couldn't outsmart her with his words, so he decided to go all in. "Fine, let's say you're right, just for argument's sake. Even though it's complete nonsense. What next?" he challenged. Yana stared at her husband, amazed by his audacity. The person in front of her now was completely different, distant and cold. It was no longer her loving Petenka, whom she adored so much. "What next? First, I want to know why. What did you yearn for?" she asked. Her concern for understanding what went wrong with their relationship was genuine, especially since he had chosen to seek solace in another woman's embrace. Everything had appeared to be perfect between them. They had married out of love, not impulsiveness, and spent the first 3 years adjusting to one another. Eventually, her parents bought them an apartment, although it didn't happen right away. They were fortunate enough to be free from the burden of mortgages, simply living and enjoying their lives. And then there was Nastya. With a malicious glint in his eyes, Petya retorted, "Did you really think I would tolerate the way your parents belittled me?" His face exuded contempt, but Jana couldn't fully comprehend his words. "How did they belittle you?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "In what way?" he scoffed. "They bought us an apartment, but they only transferred the ownership to you." "Who does that?" "They wanted us to break up. It was only a matter of time." Jana was stunned by this revelation. She knew he might not have been pleased with the arrangement, but she never considered it as humiliation. It was news to her. "If you were so offended, why didn't you leave immediately? Why didn't you leave me?" she questioned. "Or were you waiting for me to get pregnant? Poor, miserable you. Our parents provided us with a place to live, and you're still offended. And, by the way, do you know why they signed the deed of gift to me alone? I specifically asked them not to, but they wouldn't listen." Petya was taken aback. He had no idea that she had requested her parents to change their decision. However, it didn't matter anymore. Reluctantly, he inquired, "And why is that?" "Because you publicly flirted with my cousin at a wedding 3 years ago," Jana revealed. "Mom and Dad considered you a flirt. I tried explaining to them that you weren't, but they wouldn't listen because they witnessed everything." Peter was blindsided by this revelation. It was his own fault after all, although he had consumed a considerable amount of alcohol that night and barely remembered what he had done, if anything at all. "Why didn't you mention this earlier?" he asked contemptuously. "Because you never asked," Jana responded, and I was foolish enough to spend so much time convincing myself that everything was fine. Jana felt her nerves escalating. She needed to regain her composure. Despite her husband's betrayal, the child was innocent and should not be held accountable. She walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, struggling to drink it but finding some solace in doing so. Only one question plagued her mind. What should she do next? The pain she felt was overwhelming. Nastya. She had considered her a friend. How could she do this? And Petya too. He had betrayed her with someone from their own social circle, almost her closest friend. It was beyond comprehension. Sitting at the table, Jana attempted to gather her thoughts. Intuitively, she already knew what she needed to do, but the path ahead seemed incredibly difficult. After approximately 30 minutes, Petya reached his breaking point and joined Jana in the kitchen. A sense of guilt now consumed him completely. He had assumed that Jana had asked her parents to sign the deed of gift on her behalf. He believed he was punishing her by being intimate with someone else. However, he had only managed to dig himself into a deeper hole. "Jan, let's talk," he suggested. "We've discussed everything. There's nothing more to say," she replied sorrowfully. "We're married. You're pregnant. We're going to have a baby. There's so much we need to talk about," he insisted. "You know, that's something you should have considered before you slept with my friend. And now it means nothing." Petya squatted beside her, attempting to touch her knees, but Jana recoiled abruptly. The thought of his hands, which had touched another woman, perhaps even today, disgusted her, and now he was trying to touch her. "Petya, gather your things and leave. It's over between us," she declared with confidence, although she appeared broken. She felt utterly devastated. Jana had envisioned a future together, growing old side by side. Just yesterday, she had been elated about their wonderful family and the imminent arrival of their baby. And now, everything was about to change. "You're not kicking me out in the middle of the night, are you?" he questioned. "You don't have to go far. It's just a few floors down, and they're waiting for you," she responded sadly. "No, no one's waiting for me. Nastya didn't want you to find out. She's just a friend. Yours too." "A good friend? Do you really believe that? That she invested so much time in you without any intentions of being with you? You clearly don't understand women." "Just go. She'll be thrilled to have you," Jana retorted. "But I don't want to." "It doesn't matter. Just leave." Petya retreated to his bedroom, got dressed, but refrained from packing for the moment. He exited the apartment without saying goodbye. His destination was Nastya's house. He needed to find out if she would allow him to spend the night. Nastya was still awake, consumed by worry. She had anticipated that Petya would reconcile with his wife. She didn't want him to leave her before she gave birth. It felt inhumane. Yet, somewhere deep inside, she had an inkling that things might not unfold as planned. Her intuition proved correct when the doorbell rang close to midnight. Peering through the peephole, she recognized him. "What's wrong?" Nastya asked simply. "Jana kicked me out. She figured out everything. Will you let me in?" Nastya had no intentions of turning him away. She had only expected him to come down for a smoke and update her on the situation. Jenka's true cunning exceeded their expectations. She couldn't be deceived. Nastya had hoped that her husband's positive changes would render her suspicions baseless, but she was mistaken. "Will you tell me what happened?" the girl asked. "I didn't even understand it myself. I did everything you suggested." But she confronted me directly, asking, "Are you sleeping with Nastya?" I tried to evade the question, but I couldn't, he confessed. "And that was it?" Nastya inquired. Nastya became curious. Although she and Petya conversed extensively about various topics, he divulged very little about his family, always being secretive, which didn't sit well with her. "What did you tell her?" Nastya asked. Today, Petya was particularly distressed. He had lost his composure and forgotten to be cautious. It wasn't just that he rarely spoke about his family. He was ashamed to admit that in his own apartment, he was a nobody, and his name carried no weight. At least that's what he believed. In a fit of emotional release, he poured out his heart to his mistress, disclosing everything out loud. It felt as if unburdening his soul could assuage his guilt. However, he didn't realize the magnitude of his mistake. When Petya finished his story, Nastya only had one question. "So the apartment doesn't belong to you. It's Jana's?" Nastya asked. "Yes, but what difference does it make now?" Petya responded. But there was a significant difference. Nastya had already envisioned Jana leaving, making room for herself to take her place, and she wouldn't tolerate Petya looking at other women. She believed she would be a far better fit as his wife. However, everything had changed now. The spacious two-room apartment would remain with his wife. Nastya smiled and said, "Well, then, you can't stay overnight at my place. My mom will be home soon from her shift, and my father will return from the cottage in the morning. It's time for you to leave." That night, for the first time in his life, Peter slept in his car at the parking lot. By the time he arrived home in the morning, Jana had already packed everything. She refused to listen to anything he had to say. Some things are simply unforgivable. A few months later, Jana gave birth to their child, but by then Petya had relocated to another city. He had no intentions of maintaining contact with his now ex-wife. It was as if he wanted to forget that he ever had a daughter. Jana never pursued child support or sought him out. She desired to eradicate that chapter and that man from her life forever. She promptly listed the apartment for sale and soon found buyers. Jana and her daughter moved to another residence, distancing themselves from Nastya and the entire nightmare. Jana had always known that every woman possesses a sixth sense that can detect if her beloved is being unfaithful. She vowed never to doubt herself or her intuition again.